If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you come and visit us at SQE TV?
This is SQE TV, the YouTube channel for wannabe solicitors with me, Jonny Hurst. In this video, we're going to have a fun interactive quiz all about SQE2, SQE2 By Numbers.
SQE TV.
If you enjoyed our video SQE1 by numbers, then you'll love this one because it follows a very similar theme. But this is SQE2 by numbers, and before we explain what that will involve, let's just remind you what SQE2 is. So SQE2 is the skills assessment that you need to pass as part of your SQE journey. Remember, you need to pass SQE1 first, that's the multiple choice assessments, and once you've passed that, you can register for SQE2. SQE2 is this skills assessment where we'll give you lots more information about it in the video. And at some stage during your SQE journey, you need to complete 2 years worth of qualifying work experience. But you probably knew that already if you watched any of our other videos. So what are we going to show you on this video? Well, we're going to show you a grid of numbers that looks like this, and we'll ask you a question, and one of those numbers will be the answer or feature in the question. And when we present the answers to you, we will give you hopefully a lot of information that maybe you didn't have already, or at least consolidate some of the information you have about the SQE2 regime, because it is complicated, and hopefully we'll unblock some of that complexity with this interactive quiz. So this is SQE2 by numbers. Let's play!
SQE TV.
Question 1. How many attempts do you have to pass SQE2? Simple question. Let's give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the answer is you get 3 attempts to pass SQE2. In fact, it's the same for SQE1 as well. So for either SQE1 or SQE2, you get 3 chances on each assessment. And the way the rule works is that you have a 6-year period from the first SQE exam you ever sit to get through the whole of the SQE exam regime. So for example, if you sat SQE1 for the first time in January 2023, you have until January 2029 to have passed both SQE1 and SQE2. And if you are unfortunate enough not to have passed both of those assessments within that 6-year period, you are able to sit again from January 2029 in that example, but any previous pass, for example, in SQE1 would have to be discounted and you'd have to start the whole of the exam regime again. Question number 2. How many candidates sat SQE2 in April 2023? Let's give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the answer is 966. So 966 students sat SQE2 in April 23. Now, for those of you who remember our SQE1 by numbers video, there was a question asking you how many sitters sat SQE1 in January 23. Now, this is significant because the January 2023 SQE1 cohort would have been eligible to sit for the first time SQE2 in April 23. Now, there were 3,000, in fact over 3,000 sitters of SQE1 in January 23. So how come only 966 sat SQE2 in April? Well, there's an obvious reason for that. Remember, around half of them would have failed SQE1, so only 1,500 or so would have been eligible to sit SQE2 in April 23. But clearly some students are deciding to defer their studies and or sitting SQE2 until a later date. And you need to remember there are 3 sits of SQE2 in 2023 and 4 in 2024. So there are more sits of SQE2 per year than there are for SQE1, where there are only 2 sits. So there's quite a bit of flexibility in terms of when you decide to sit your SQE2 assessments. And some people are leaving them until maybe later on, maybe after they've got a bit more qualifying work experience, because that will obviously help them develop the key skills they need to demonstrate in order to pass SQE2. Question number 3. What are the SQE2 assessment fees for the academic year 2023 to 2024? I'll give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the answer is £2,766. Now, this is the fee to sit the whole of the SQE2 assessments. There are many mini assessments made up within the SQE2 assessment, and that's the one fee you pay to sit the lot. Unfortunately, if you fail, you have to pay the whole fee again because SQE2 is assessed on an all or nothing basis. Unlike SQE1, you can't bank anything that you pass along the way. In fact, you're not assessed on pass or fail for the mini assessments you take as part of SQE2. Literally, it's an overall mark you get for that assessment. So it's quite a hefty sum, so make sure you're fully prepared for SQE2 before you sit it bearing in mind the cost of the fees and the cost to resit. Also bear in mind that 2766 is just the cost for the assessment fees. It's not the cost for any course or preparation fee you would have to do to get ready for the assessment. That's something that's completely different. And just whilst we're talking about assessment fees, the total amount for the assessment fees in the 23-24 year, if you add it to the SQE1 assessment fees, comes to £4,564. So that's quite a considerable sum. And bearing in mind the low pass rates, particularly for SQE1, it really means that it's very important that you choose a really good course from a reputable provider to prepare you for those assessments before you actually sit them. Question number 4. How many skill stations are there for SQE2? And by skill stations, what we mean are how many mini assessments are there for SQE2. They're called stations because you move from one to the other during the course of one of the assessment days. So how many skill stations are there for SQE2? You've got 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there are 16 of these, 4 of which are for oral skills and 12 are for written skills. And they are assessed on a number of different days. Question number 5. How many SQE2 assessment days are there? Well, there's only really one obvious answer on the board there. It's 5, of course. Let's just unpack that a little. So there are 3 written skills assessment days and 2 oral skills assessment days. And you, for the oral assessments, will do 2 oral assessments on each of those 2 days. And on a written skills assessment day, you do 4 written skills on each of those days. What could you be assessed on? Well, a whole range of oral and written skills, from advocacy to case and matter analysis, interviewing and advising and writing up an attendance note, legal drafting, legal research and legal writing. And what happens is that you are assessed not just on the skill, but also the underlying law that requires you to draft a document or give advice and so on. And 50% of the marks are for demonstrating that functioning legal knowledge, going back to SQE1, so you need to keep that SQE1 knowledge maintained, and the other half of the marks for SQE2 are for your competence in that particular skill.
SQE TV.
Question number 6. What was the pass mark for SQE2 in April 2023? And I'll give you a clue. There are 2 pass marks. I'll explain why in a moment. You've got 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the answers are 61% and 62%. So why do we have more than one pass mark? Well, the reason for that is that students do different scenarios when being tested on the skills. So I might have a particular scenario in a particular context which is testing a particular skill. You, to be tested on the same skill, may have a different scenario altogether. In fact, there are 4 different variations of that across the whole of one set of exams in April 23. And 2 of the assessments came out at 61% and 2 came out at 62%. And if you compare that to 12 months earlier, there were 2 assessments at 65%, 2 at 66%. So it gives you an idea where the pass mark is. And what the examiners are looking to do is to benchmark the pass mark at a figure which is equivalent to that a newly qualified solicitor would be expected to achieve. Question number 7. What was the pass rate for SQE2 in April 2023? You got 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the answer is 77% of all students sitting SQE2 in April 23 passed. It's 80% if you just count the first sitters. Obviously the discrepancy is because some of the resitters would have failed in that first stat I gave you. Now you're probably thinking, well, why is the pass rate so high for SQE2 compared to SQE1, where in January 23 it was only 51% and most SQE1 pass rates tend to be about somewhere in the sort of low 50s. Why is that the case? Well, if you think about it, it's quite obvious, really. If you take SQE2, you must have passed SQE1, bar the 1 or 2 exceptions that there are. And that means you're going to have a much stronger cohort sitting SQE2, and therefore with that general greater overall strength, you're going to get a higher pass rate. Question number 8. What do these 3 numbers represent in the context of SQE2? I'll give you a clue. It's something deeply troubling to me, and it's probably deeply troubling to all of you. So I'll give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, these numbers represent the attainment gap that there is between different ethnic groups in the SQE2 assessment in April 2023. So 90% represents the pass rate for white candidates, 71% is the pass rate for British, Asian and Asian candidates, and 52% is the pass rate for Black British and black candidates in the same assessment in April 2023. Now this mirrors very much the attainment gap that has been in previous assessments, including SQE1 assessments, and the SRA, not surprisingly, have commissioned some research at Exeter University to look into why this is the case. It's not untypical of the attainment gap in a lot of professional assessments if you look at them internationally and also across different disciplines, even here within the UK. But it is nonetheless deeply troubling and is something that I hope the SRA gets to the bottom of sooner rather than later for obvious reasons. And now your penultimate question, question 9. A quintile is 20% of what for the purpose of the SQE? I'll give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And no, I didn't know what a quintile was either until I came across the SQE, so you're not alone. So what's a quintile? It's 20% of the total number of students in a cohort who sit a particular assessment. Why is this significant? Well, what happens is each student is told which quintile they are in for every SQE assessment they get their results for. So on your record card, your transcript, which is sent by way of a PDF, you will be told whether you're in the first, second, third, fourth or fifth quintile for that assessment. And clearly that's going to be something that recruiters are going to be quite keen in knowing, because they can then benchmark you against other candidates. And that's why it's really important not just to pass the SQE, but also to pass very, very well. And just to be clear, you get separate quintile marks for SQE1 and SQE2. And finally, the last question we have for you on this video really refers back to SQE1 by numbers, because we gave you some homework at the end, and the numbers you see on the screen are the remaining numbers where we need to give you some answers to and some context. So 1073 was the number of sitters that there were for SQE1 in November 2021. That was the very first sit. As I've said to you now on a number of occasions, the number of sitters is now 3 times that many. So really from January 23, when the numbers went beyond 3,000, that's the first statistically reliable sit from a data point of view for students who sat SQE1. The second figure of 76 is 76%, but I want to give you a little bit of a context as to what that means. What Legal Cheek did in about the middle of 2023 or early spring of 2023, they surveyed a number of leading law firms to find out whether the content that was previously on the LPC, like elective, specialist elective knowledge content, whether firms were prepared to pay for it or train students in-house themselves, because there is a knowledge gap between what students would have learnt on the LPC with specialist knowledge in specialist practice areas that isn't covered by the regular SQE syllabus. And 76% of the leading law firms who were surveyed said that they would pay additional sums for that additional knowledge, and that's typically going to be reflected in the larger master's courses that a number of providers are offering. So that's 76%. The other 24% or so said that they would train their students in-house for that additional knowledge. And finally, the last figure you can see in front of you is £12,167. That represents the sum you can borrow from the student loans company in order to finance a master's version of an SQE course.
SQE TV.
So that was SQE2 by numbers. I hope you enjoyed it. We've unpacked a lot of information there for you, and I hope that that's helped to give you a little bit more of an insight into what SQE2 is all about. If you like this video, please do like, subscribe, share and comment on the video. Tell your friends all about it. We are becoming quite an influential channel, so please do spread the word. And it just remains for me to say, here is the jingle one more time.
If you wanna be solicitors, why don't you come and visit us at SQE2